Sorry, sir. This seat is not yours. Please move to economy. The words landed just as Noah Carter set his leather briefcase down by seat 2A. In that instant, the first-class cabin froze. Crystal flutes of champagne stopped mid-glimmer. A few passengers glanced over, lips curling into quiet smirks. Only Noah, 40 years old, remained still. His eyes lifted slowly from the business magazine in his hand to the woman in a navy uniform standing before him. To her, Noah was an outsider, a black man dressed plainly, someone who surely did not belong in the most coveted seat on the plane, the one reserved for those deemed more deserving. What she did not know was that the man she dismissed had just become the new owner of Skyline Airlines through a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. The Swiss watch on his wrist caught the cabin light, not flashy, but valuable enough to command silence. He leaned back, inhaled deeply, remembering the morning only hours earlier. In his high-rise Chicago apartment, his assistant Priya Patel had handed him a folder. "Congratulations, you officially own an airline." Noah had only smiled. He chose not to fly private, not to arrive with an entourage, but to book a commercial ticket in first class to experience Skyline through the eyes of a customer. No one on his team agreed with the decision. But Noah insisted, to change a system, you have to see it with your own eyes. From the poverty of South Side Chicago, Noah had climbed every rung in the dark. His father, a night shift steelworker, hands rough and scarred. His mother, a janitor scrubbing office floors until dawn. They had told him, never forget where you started, but never let anyone decide where you stop. Those words carried him to MIT on a full scholarship, through every sneer and doubt in boardrooms, through every dismissive remark. What would a black man know about clean tech? With a sharp mind, he built Phoenix Innovations into a powerhouse of renewable energy. From a cramped apartment, he rose into the ranks of America's most powerful CEOs, and yet today, on the airline he now owned, he was treated like an intruder. Flight attendant Emily Barnes, blonde hair pinned neat, eyes scanning him like a fraud, lowered her voice but not enough to escape nearby ears. "There is a Diamond member who needs this seat. We'll find another for you." Rage flared inside Noah, but he restrained it. Behind his silence was something larger. He knew he was watching Skyline's illness unfold in real time, an illness of bias, favoritism, and contempt. And what Emily had just done would stand as proof. No one else in the cabin knew the truth. To them, Noah was just another passenger being reassigned. To Emily, it was her duty to please a VIP. To Bradley Whitmore, the silver-haired businessman barking from the aisle, it was a victory, proof that he was more deserving. Only one man understood the pieces being moved, Noah Carter. He quietly set down his magazine, eyes sweeping the cabin. Every mocking glance, every secret tool, every whispered slight. He swallowed the bitterness rising in his throat, but in his gaze burned a quiet light. You will learn today that you have made the greatest mistake. As Noah walked toward economy, his heart pounded heavy. Each step was humiliation, but also preparation for the counterstrike. In his leather bag, he carried more than a laptop and contracts. Inside lay the full blueprint to reform Skyline, the very plan he would present to the board the next day. And now, this cabin crew, this very flight, was adding chapters to a story that no one could deny. Seated in a cramped middle seat between two large passengers, his elbows pressed tight, Noah slipped out his phone. The encrypted message he sent carried only 2 words: "Activate Renaissance." On the other end, Priya Patel would know what it meant. The reform had begun. The story of a boy from South Side, once dismissed, now the CEO commanding an airline empire, was entering a new chapter. It was no longer about a seat, no longer about a flight attendant. This was a battle to redefine fairness from the skies to the ground below, and the crew that had forced him out of first class had no idea they had just lit the fuse of a storm that would sweep away an entire system. The economy cabin was stifling. Cramped space, whispers, the click of seat belts, the sighs of passengers weary of delays. Noah Carter sat in seat 23B, wedged between 2 large men, his shoulders pressed so tightly he could barely breathe. The smell of snacks and the stale plastic of the tray table added to the suffocation. He gave a thin smile. From a first-class seat worth over $2,000, he was now crammed into a spot where his knees nearly touched the seat ahead. A quiet humiliation. Yet in his eyes there was no despair, only the cold fire of a man recording every detail to calculate his counterstrike. Flight attendant Emily Barnes passed by without so much as a glance at Noah. But for the white passenger across the aisle, she bent low, her smile radiant, her voice sweet. "Would you like some champagne, sir?" Noah narrowed his eyes. Every gesture, every smile, every small but glaring difference. He pulled out his phone, pressed record, letting their own voices condemn them. Class, race, prejudice, all wrapped in the moment. Emily handed champagne one way, then stepped past him as if he were invisible. A deep voice spoke beside him. "Don't be surprised. This happens every flight." Noah turned. A middle-aged man with dark skin and a sturdy frame extended his hand. "Trevor Miles," he said. "I work in logistics. I fly Skyline all the time. And trust me, this is normal." Noah tilted his head. "You've been treated like this too?" Trevor gave a weary nod, anger simmering beneath. "Last time, I was pulled for extra security screening for the 5th time in a year. The white passengers with me never were." Noah exhaled slowly. He knew Trevor was telling the truth. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern, a systemic disease. The chime dinged. An elderly Indian woman in the row ahead pressed the call button over and over. Her face had gone pale, her hands shaking as she clutched her chest. Her husband, frantic, pleaded for help. Emily and Chief Attendant Grant Ellis walked past, glancing briefly before moving on. Grant muttered dismissively, "Probably just nerves. She should breathe slowly." Noah's eyes widened. He saw it clearly. The pale lips, the rapid breaths, the weakening movements. Classic warning signs. And he knew if they hesitated, her heart could stop. Without a pause, he shot to his feet, his voice ringing through the cabin. "She's having a heart attack. She needs medical help now." Grant frowned, his tone sharp. "Are you a doctor?" "Sit down." Noah's reply cut through like steel. I was an EMT volunteer at MIT. I know the signs. If you delay, she will die. A wave of whispers swept the cabin. A nurse rushed forward from the back rows, confirming Noah's words. The aircraft veered immediately for an emergency landing. Grant and Emily exchanged panicked looks. They knew their negligence had nearly killed a passenger. In that moment, many eyes turned toward Noah. No longer skeptical, they now saw him for what he was, not just a man out of place more, but the one who had just saved a life. As the plane took off again, the atmosphere shifted. Passengers of color began to whisper, sharing their own stories. A Latina woman spoke of constantly being mistaken for a flight attendant despite her business suit. An Asian professor admitted he was checked for upgraded tickets more times than anyone else. Noah quietly recorded it all. He knew each story was a piece of a puzzle, together forming the portrait of an airline run on bias. Trevor leaned in, voice low. You've got a plan, don't you? The way you're watching, you're not just another passenger. Noah smiled faintly. He said nothing, but his eyes burned with resolve. Tomorrow, everything changes. Emily passed again, her voice dripping with disdain, whispered to a colleague, but loud enough for Noah to hear. He thought he belonged in first class. Guess he's been exposed now. The words, petty as they seemed, were the final hammer blow. To her, to them, Noah had never belonged there. He straightened, pulled out his phone, and sent an encrypted message to Priya Patel. Prepare emergency board meeting, B-24, Atlanta landing. Short words, but heavy enough to shake Skyline to its core. Outside, the jet cut through the silent night sky. Inside the cabin, a storm was gathering, fed by indifference, prejudice, and venomous whispers. And when the wheels touched down in Atlanta, it would not be the end of a flight. It would be the beginning of a new era for Skyline. The Boeing 787 trembled slightly as it touched down on the Atlanta runway. The cabin lights flicked on, passengers bustling to gather their bags. But Noah Carter did not. Move. He sat still, eyes sharp and fixed ahead. Everything was only just beginning. Chief Attendant Grant Ellis and Emily Barnes stood at the cabin door, plastering on hollow smiles. They repeated the same empty line. Thank you for flying with Skyline. When Bradley Whitmore, the so-called diamond passenger who had stolen seat 2A from Noah, stepped out, Emily nearly bowed as she said, We hope you enjoyed your first-class experience. Bradley grinned smugly, his voice loud enough for all to hear. Much better, once you rearranged things properly. Some passengers nodded. A few snickers broke out. From the middle rows, Noah rose. He pulled his suitcase and walked slowly toward the exit. As he approached, Emily forced a smile, her tone dripping with mockery. Thank you for your cooperation today, Grant added flatly. Next time, check your ticket class before boarding. Neither of them knew that the man they had just humiliated was in fact the new owner of Skyline. Noah answered only with a calm look, no words. But inside, every emotion sharpened into a blade. Exiting the jet bridge, Noah immediately pulled out his phone. The encrypted message he had sent mid-air had already set things in motion. Phoenix Innovations had acted. A text from Priya Patel. Conference room B-24 is ready. Legal, PR, and operations teams are on their way. We have the customer complaint data you asked for. Noah typed back. Hold the entire crew. Call Whitmore. No one leaves. At the gate counter, a young staffer named Ashley Monroe hesitated when Noah ordered the crew detained. I'm sorry, sir, but regulations don't allow, Noah said. Nothing. He pulled from his jacket a sleek black business card, embossed with silver letters. Noah Carter, Chief Executive Officer, Globe Tech Corporation. Ashley's eyes widened. She swallowed hard, her hand shaking as she lifted the phone to call her manager. Within moments, the news spread through the terminal. Airport supervisors rushed in, alarmed. 10 minutes later, the entire Flight 1287 crew, Grant, Emily, Kelly, and 2 others, were summoned back. They entered puzzled, but when they saw Skyline's senior leadership gathered alongside high-ranking airport officials, the air turned heavy. Noah walked in last, no longer a displaced passenger from economy class, but the man holding Skyline's fate in his hands. Grant froze. Emily's face drained of color, her voice stammering. You are? Noah gave a serene nod. That's right. The man you threw out of seat 2A. They were led into the conference room B24, now packed. Lawyers, media representatives, senior managers, and several passengers willing to testify, including Trevor Miles. On the table, rows of laptops displayed streams of customer complaints, charts and numbers, flashing like evidence in court. Noah took the chair at the head. He scanned the room, his voice deep and unyielding, each word striking like a gavel. We will address what happened on this flight. Here. Now. In front of everyone. A few Skyline executives forced polite smiles, hoping to maneuver. Regional Director Howard Langston stepped forward, wearing his most diplomatic grin. Mr. Carter, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Noah cut him off, his gaze like a blade. No. Everything will be addressed publicly. This is not a private matter. This is the culture of an entire airline. Howard faltered, sweat beading at his temples. He knew every escape route was sealed. Noah lifted his phone, connecting it to the conference speaker. Emily's recorded voice filled the room, cold and unmistakable. Thought he was someone who belonged in first class. Turns out he wasn't. The sound echoed like ice. Emily's face went white, her lips trembling. I didn't mean... Trevor rose, his voice ringing. Don't pretend. I've witnessed this discrimination dozens of times, and today I'm ready to testify. Noah nodded, motioning for Trevor to sit. Then he turned to the room, his voice booming. What happened today was not an individual failure. It is the product of a system. And that system... He paused, his eyes sweeping across every face. From this moment forward, will be changed. In that instant, the conference room thickened with tension. Every eye locked on Noah, the man dismissed hours earlier, now seated as the one who would decide the fate of thousands of employees and millions of passengers. With this unmasking, everyone finally understood. The man they had cast aside was not weak. He was the true master, and he had come to settle the score. The door of conference room B24 closed. The noise outside faded, leaving behind a suffocating silence. Every eye turned to one man, Noah Carter. No longer the economy passenger thrown from his seat, but the new CEO of Skyline's parent company, the man who had flipped the board with a single business card. Grant Ellis sat with arms crossed, trying to look unmaken. Emily Barnes trembled, her fingernails digging into the edge of her chair. Kelly, the youngest attendant, lowered her head, cheeks burning red. Bradley Whitmore, the man so proud of being prioritized into seat 2A, sat at the far end of the table, still in shock. Noah rose. Each step he took around the long table echoed like a gavel striking in court. He placed his phone on the table, pressed play. Emily's voice rang out, sharp and mocking. Thought he was someone fit for first class. Turns out he wasn't. No one dared breathe. Then Kelly's voice followed. Maybe it was his first time ever in first class. The room froze. Emily buried her face. Kelly bit her lip. Grant kept a stern front, but sweat beaded on his forehead. This was not an isolated incident, Noah said, his voice low but carrying to every corner. This is the culture Skyline has fostered. A culture that selects passengers through prejudice, not service. Howard Langston, regional director, rushed to interject, panic in his tone. Mr. Carter, I apologize, but these actions do not represent the company as a whole. We can handle this internally, terminate a few individuals. Noah turned, his gaze cutting like steel. Terminate a few individuals to dodge accountability? No, Mr. Langston. The arrogance lies in leadership, and I will root it out. Grant shot to his feet, voice rising. We were just following policy. Diamond passengers are priority. Mr. Whitmore deserved. Deserved? Noah's voice sliced across the room like a blade, silencing him mid-sentence. I bought a first-class ticket. I sat in my assigned seat. What right did you have to strip it away just to please a favored passenger? Grant faltered, but Bradley leaned back, scoffing. Mr. Carter, you're new to Skyline. You don't understand. I fly hundreds of thousands of miles a year. Skyline knows who truly brings profit. That's why I'm always prioritized. Noah fixed his eyes on Bradley. His voice was low but ice. Cold. You mistake loyalty for entitlement. But today, you became the living proof of this culture of discrimination. At that moment, Priya Patel entered carrying a thick file. She laid it on the table, opening it page by page. Charts lit up the projector. 417 complaints of discrimination in a single year. 70. 3% from passengers of color. 89% closed without action. Silence crushed the room. Howard bowed his head. Emily broke into sobs. Kelly whispered, I didn't know. Noah folded his arms, his tone unyielding. Don't say you didn't know. When you mocked, when you ignored, when you turned away from a woman having a heart attack, that was proof you knew, but chose not to act. A sharp ding came from Priya's phone. She handed it to Noah. A video clip flashed onto the screen. Noah being forced out of seat 2A, already viral, over 1 million views in just hours. Howard paled, his voice breaking. My God, the media will destroy us. Noah lifted his brow, his voice cutting firm. No. The truth is destroying Skyline. I will turn this truth into the beginning of a new culture. And that begins tonight. He straightened, his words rolling like thunder. Effective immediately, the entire crew of Flight 1287 is suspended pending investigation. Bradley Whitmore, your preferential contract with Skyline will be reviewed. Howard Langston, you and your management team will face internal investigation backed by full complaint data. Emily sobbed. Please, I didn't mean. It was just habit. Noah looked at her, his eyes cold but not cruel. Your biggest mistake was not what you did today, but treating discrimination as a habit. And it is that habit that has turned Skyline into an airline of prejudice, not of service. The room grew tighter, ready to burst. Skyline's managers sweated, some bowing their heads to avoid Noah's gaze. But at the back, Trevor Miles gave a firm nod. He knew this moment would mark company history. Noah drew a deep breath, his voice slow but resolute. Tomorrow, I will face the press, and I will tell the world this. Skyline will change. No more privileges based on skin color. No more ignored cries for help. From today, justice will fly with every flight. Outside, the airport intercom called another departure. But inside B-24, no one moved. Everyone knew they had just witnessed a verdict, a declaration, and the dawn of a quake that would shake Skyline Airlines. And at the center of it stood Noah Carter. No longer the passenger cast aside, but the true CEO, the man who had just unmasked an entire system. The next morning, the Meridian Atlanta Hotel became a fortress of media. The grand lobby was flooded with flashing lights. Dozens of satellite trucks lined the entrance. From the New York Times to CNN, from Reuters to the BBC, every major outlet had sent reporters. A video showing Noah Carter being forced from seat 2A had spread it across the globe. Within 12 hours, the hashtag #FlyingWhileBlack had become a worldwide trend. Inside the prep room, Noah stood before the mirror, adjusting his tie. His eyes were deep, steady, but heavy with gravity. His aide, Priya Patel, entered holding a tablet. Over 30 million views in one night. The market is reacting sharply. Skyline stock has dropped 12 points, but Phoenix Innovations has surged. Noah nodded, his voice low. This is no longer about a seat. This is about justice. Behind the stage, the communications team whispered nervously. Dylan Brooks, head of PR, lowered his voice. There will be hard questions. They'll say you're using this incident to polish your image. They'll ask about legality, about shareholder value. Noah gave a faint smile. I've faced doubt my entire life. A few questions cannot shake me. He stepped out. The lights blazed. The room was packed with journalists. Lenses pointed straight at him. The air was tight as a drawn bow. Noah placed his hands on the podium, drew a long breath, and began. Good morning. I am Noah Carter, CEO of Phoenix Innovations, and as of yesterday, the new CEO of Globe Tech, the parent company of Skyline Airlines. A wave of whispers rippled across the room. Several reporters immediately typed furiously. Yesterday, traveling from Chicago to Atlanta as a regular passenger, I was forced to give up my rightful first-class seat. The reason? Another white passenger was deemed more deserving. I am not sharing this to complain about myself. I share it because that moment was a mirror reflecting a disease that has lasted far too long. Systemic discrimination. He pressed the remote. The giant screen behind him lit up with the video. Emily forcing him down to economy, the mocking laughter, and then the moment he stood to save an elderly Indian woman from a heart attack. The hall held its breath. Noah paused the video, turning his gaze directly into the cameras. This was not just a mistake. It was proof of a culture built on bias. And I stand here to say, from today, Skyline will change. A CNBC reporter stood. "Mr. Carter, some argue you are exploiting this incident to demonstrate power after your acquisition. How do you respond?" Noah straightened, his voice ringing clear. "If I had stayed silent, you would call me a coward. If I speak out, you say I exploit. The truth is this. Silence means complicity. I choose action." Another journalist pressed sharply. "But sweeping reforms could unsettle shareholders. Are you not afraid of losing market value?" Noah answered, each word striking like a drumbeat. "When a company builds profit on humiliating its passengers, that value is an illusion. Justice does not destroy value. Justice creates lasting value." In the front row, Trevor Miles, the passenger who had witnessed the incident, stood up. Though not a journalist, he asked to speak. "I fly Skyline dozens of times each year. What I saw yesterday was not rare. It was routine. Mr. Carter, if you truly change Skyline, you will have the support of thousands of passengers like me." Applause thundered, spreading through the hall. Even some reporters who had stayed neutral nodded in agreement. Noah lifted the microphone, his voice warm but firm. "I am not seeking applause. I am seeking accountability. Skyline will establish a passenger bill of rights, transparent and fair. Every complaint will be reviewed by an independent counsel, not buried by management. And those who spread prejudice will have no place in this organization." Each word struck like a hammer, breaking through years of silence. Suddenly, the back doors burst open. Bradley Whitmore stormed in, face flushed red. He pointed at Noah, shouting, "This is abuse of power! He is destroying Skyline for his own ego." The reporters erupted. Cameras swung toward Bradley. Noah did not flinch. His gaze was steady, his voice calm. "Mr. Whitmore, would you like to tell the world why you believe you deserved to take another man's seat?" Bradley froze. A flurry of questions forced him to explain. But the more he spoke, the more his arrogance and entitlement spilled out. In the eyes of the press, he was no longer a loyal VIP, but the living symbol of rotted privilege. Noah closed with a voice that rolled like thunder. "Yesterday, I was forced from seat 2A, but today I sit in a larger seat, the seat of leadership. And from this seat, I promise, no passenger will ever again feel lesser because of their skin, their name, or their origin." Applause erupted like a storm. Cameras captured everything, from Noah's unwavering resolve to Bradley's unraveling composure. The images spread instantly, becoming the symbol of a revolution in aviation. Noah quietly left the podium, stepping backstage. Priya met his eyes, pride and concern intertwined. "You just declared war on an entire system." Noah's smile flickered, his eyes burning bright. "Yes, and I do not intend to lose." While the applause of the press still echoed in the hotel lobby, at Globe Tech headquarters in New York, another storm was brewing. On the 42nd floor, the long glass, topped boardroom table was surrounded by 12 tense faces, the board of directors. The massive screen played live footage from CNN, showing Noah Carter declaring the suspension and investigation of Skyline's entire management, along with his promise of systemic change. A few members nodded in approval, but most frowned in worry. Randall Morrison, a longtime shareholder with slick silver hair, slammed his hand on the table. "He's lost his mind. We didn't acquire Skyline to turn it into a social experiment. The stock lost hundreds of millions in a single day." Victoria Blackwell, the most powerful woman on the board, calmly set down her teacup, her voice low but commanding. "And Mr. Morrison, are you ignoring the fact that the viral video has reached 60 million views in just 24 hours? Public sentiment isn't with Skyline, it's with Carter. That is our greatest asset right now." Another director interjected nervously. "But if we let him continue, the market will stay volatile. Investors hate risk. A brand new CEO, less than 48 hours in, already flipping an entire company upside down. This sets a dangerous precedent." Victoria leaned forward, her gaze sharp as steel. "What's more dangerous is continuing to cover up discrimination and facing dozens of class action lawsuits. Carter is not just speaking about morality. He is calculating economics." Meanwhile, in another room at the Meridian Hotel, Noah was in an emergency meeting with his team. Priya Patel scrolled through reports. Dylan Brooks updated the media landscape. Amara Jackson, the chief legal officer, placed a thick folder on the table. "We've received over 200 testimonies from former Skyline employees just overnight. They are willing to testify about systemic discriminatory policies engineered by Howard Langston and his group. If this goes to court, Skyline won't stand a chance." Noah folded his arms, his gaze deep and steady. "They know I have the evidence, and they won't sit quietly." True enough, that evening Howard Langston appeared on an opposition news channel. He tried to appear calm, but his voice was dripping with venom. "Noah Carter knows nothing about aviation. He's just a tech guy, exploiting a minor incident to stage a spectacle. This is an insult to employees who have dedicated their entire lives to Skyline." Behind the curtain, Bradley Whitmore sat with his legs crossed, smiling smugly. He whispered to the host, "Push the angle of Carter's personal ambition. He wants power, not justice." Back in the hotel room, Noah watched the broadcast on the big screen. His face remained calm, but his fists clenched tight. Trevor Miles, the passenger who had witnessed everything on the flight, spoke up beside him. "You can't let them dominate the airwaves. If they twist the narrative, the public will be misled." Noah nodded, his voice deep. "We don't respond with words. We respond with truth." He turned to Dylan. "Prepare to release the full complaint data and set up a live town hall. I want to face the audience directly. No shields, no excuses." Night fell over Atlanta. On a high balcony, Noah stood alone, gazing down at the glittering city. In the night breeze, he remembered the South Side neighborhood where he grew up, where his father came home from night shifts with his shirt soaked in sweat, and his mother bent over scrubbing office floors until dawn. They had told him, "Never let anyone decide where you belong." He whispered softly, Father, Mother, today I sit in the chair they once said I would never reach. And from this chair I will force the system to change. But behind the lights, shadows were moving. A strange message appeared on Priya's phone. "Tell Carter to stop, if not, we'll go after his family first." Priya went pale and immediately handed it to Noah. He read it, his eyes hardening with an icy fire he had never shown before. This was no longer just a battle in boardrooms. This was a fight for survival, where power clawed into the darkest corners. Noah gripped the phone tightly, his voice like a vow. "They think threats will make me retreat, but their threats prove I am on the right path. And this time, I will not back down." A knock came at the door. Security reported that a crowd of supporters had gathered outside the hotel, holding banners that read, "Stand with Carter." Their chants rose into the night, merging with the heartbeat of a city waiting for justice. Noah turned to Priya, Dylan, Amara, and Trevor. His voice was slow, steady, but burning with fire. "Tomorrow, we don't just face the board. We face those who have thrived on injustice. But remember, justice never comes easily, and that is exactly why it's worth the fight." Dawn spread a pale gold light over Atlanta, but inside Noah Carter, the air was heavy, thick like a storm about to break. A message from Priya Patel arrived at 6 a.m. "Globetech board meeting at 9 a.m. topic: limiting the CEO's power to hire and fire." Noah read it and closed his eyes briefly. He had expected this, but it still felt like a blade twisting in his chest. Last night, he had sworn not to back down. This morning, that vow would be tested by fire. The Globetech Tower in New York glowed like a fortress of steel and glass. On the 42nd floor, the grand boardroom stretched wide, leather chairs set in a sweeping arc. Familiar faces filled the seats. Morrison, cold and venomous. Victoria Blackwell, calm, her eyes unreadable. Other shareholders wore masks of worry, anger, or quiet support. When Noah entered, every gaze fixed on him. A grey suit, a neat tie, his slow, deliberate steps landing like hammers on the floor. No one saw a man dragged from seat 2A anymore. Before them stood a CEO who understood exactly where his power lay. Randall Morrison opened, his gravelly voice sharp. "We meet today because Mr. Carter's actions have caused catastrophic losses in the market. Over $400 million vanished in 24 hours. I propose a vote. Restrict the CEO's power to hire and fire, forcing all major decisions to require board approval." A few nods of agreement rippled around the table. An undercurrent of revolt swelled. Noah leaned back, his gaze steady. "Before you vote, listen to some numbers," he signaled. Priya entered, setting a portable projector on the table. Charts and graphs lit the massive screen, data from legal and communications teams. "In the past 36 months, Noah began, his voice resonant. "Skyline has received over 1,200 complaints of discrimination. 3% were closed without action. Potential lawsuits alone could cost this company more than $800 million. That is the real evaporation of value, gentlemen." Silence fell heavy. Morrison's hands gripped the arms of his chair. Noah pressed on, his voice faster, harder. "In the past 24 hours, The video of the incident has been viewed 70 million times. Public approval for Globe Tech has risen 31%. Tens of thousands of passengers have pledged to return to Skyline because they believe in reform. Value does not live in short-term stock prices. Value lives in her trust, and today that trust belongs to us. A board member spoke hesitantly. But public opinion shifts quickly. If you fail, Noah cut in, his eyes sharp as steel. If I fail, at least I fail trying to fix it. If we continue to cover it up, we will certainly fail in disgrace. Murmurs swept through the room. Victoria Blackwell arched a brow, then nodded. Morrison slammed the table. Enough! We cannot allow one man to act without restraint. I demand a vote now. Electronic ballots appeared on the screen. 5 votes, yes, Morrison and his faction. 4 votes, no. 2 undecided seats hung in the balance. The tension was suffocating. Noah rose, stepped into the center of the room. He offered no more charts. Instead, he told a story. When I was 10, he began slowly, my father came home from a night shift at the steel mill. His shirt was drenched in sweat. He told me, Noah, never let anyone decide where you belong. I never forgot. Yesterday, a flight attendant told me the opposite, that I did not deserve seat 2A, even though I had paid for it. That was not just an insult to me, but to everyone who has ever been pushed aside because they looked like they did not belong. He paused, eyes sweeping the room. If this board votes to restrict me, it means you choose to keep Skyline the same. It means you are willing to tell millions of customers they do not deserve their place. And I promise you this, if that is your choice, I will resign right here, right now, and I will tell the world that this board chose to protect privilege instead of justice. Then, let us see how the market reacts. The room erupted in silent shock. His words were no bluff. They were a knife driven straight into the heart of profit. The 2 undecided members glanced at each other. They knew if Noah resigned while public opinion stood firmly behind him, the stock would collapse entirely. A beep echoed. On the screen, the 6th vote flipped to no. Then the 7th. Final tally. 7 against, 5 in favor. The proposal to limit the CEO's power was struck down. Morrison sat stunned, his face flushed. Victoria smiled faintly, her eyes meeting Noah's in acknowledgement. He had just won a battle for survival. Noah stood tall, his voice firm, ringing through the chamber. Thank you. But this is not the end. This is only the beginning of a new Skyline, where no one is dismissed simply for being who they are. As he left the room, his phone buzzed. An anonymous message appeared. You may have won in the boardroom, but outside, we will take what you love most. Do not test us. Noah gripped the phone tightly. The shadows were still circling, but now he was no longer alone. He had the public, he had allies, and he had trust. The real battle between justice and the darkness of power had just entered its next chapter. That night, as the lights of New York reflected off his office window, Noah Carter stood silently staring at his phone. Another anonymous message appeared, longer this time. You may have won in the boardroom, but you cannot protect your family. We know where your daughter goes to school. We know what time your wife exercises. Stop now, or you will lose far more than a seat." Noah's fingers trembled slightly, but his eyes burned with a cold fire. The night was still, the only sound the pounding of his heartbeat in his chest. A sharp gust slipped through the crack of the window, carrying the metallic scent of threat. In the emergency meeting that followed, the head of security reported, "There are signs of surveillance around your family's residence. Cameras caught 2 men approaching your wife's car this morning. They left when they noticed security nearby." Priya Patel's face drained of color. "We need to move your family to a safe location. I've contacted a secure facility outside the city." Noah gripped the armrest of his chair, his voice heavy and low. "They think they can strike at my weakness. But that only proves they fear change, and I will not let fear win." The next day, tension hung like a storm cloud over Skyline's Atlanta headquarters. Rumors spread fast. The new CEO had received threats on his life. Employees whispered in the corridors, eyes filled with both worry and admiration. Trevor Miles arrived carrying a thick folder. He placed it in front of Noah. "This is evidence of the times I was singled out for security checks, of passengers whose tickets were unjustly cancelled. But more important," Trevor lowered his voice, his eyes flashing, "I have connections with 3 former mid-level managers at Skyline. They are willing to testify that Howard Langston and Bradley Whitmore routinely interfered to bury complaints. One of them has a direct email from Howard ordering reports to be buried." Noah looked up, eyes sparking. This was not just evidence. It was a weapon. Meanwhile, in the shadows of an upscale bar, Bradley Whitmore sat across from Howard Langston. Their glasses clinked as their voices dropped low beneath the hum of jazz. "Carter thinks he's won? We've been doing this for 20 years, with half the officials in our pocket. He's just arrived and thinks he can topple an entire system." Bradley sneered. Howard leaned closer, his tone like ice. "I already have people following his family. One slip, and Carter will have to choose. Justice or safety." The red wine swirled, its reflection glinting like a streak of blood. The following day, Noah appeared live on a national broadcast. The topic, equity in aviation. The studio blazed with lights. The audience sat in expectant silence. The host went straight in. "Mr. Carter, reports suggest your family is under threat. Will you continue this campaign, knowing your personal safety is at stake?" The air thickened. All waited for his answer. Noah inhaled deeply, his voice slow but resolute. "Yes, my family has been threatened. But if I back down, what message does that send? That justice only matters when it's safe? That change must bow to intimidation? No. I choose to move forward. Not just for myself, but for every passenger ever dismissed, for every employee ever silenced." Applause thundered across the studio, spreading like wildfire. The hashtag #StandWithNoah exploded live on air. After the broadcast, Priya rushed to assure him, her voice tight with worry. "You're only making them more desperate." Noah placed a hand gently on her shoulder, his eyes soft but unwavering. "I know. But silence is even more dangerous. What they fear most is the light, and I will drag them into it." That night, in the safe house where his family had been moved, his wife Elena Carter appeared on a video call. Her face lit the screen, eyes anxious yet fierce. "You don't need to apologize, Noah. I knew this road would not be easy. We've fought too hard to get here. If you give up now, that would be the real disappointment." Noah smiled faintly, eyes glistening. "I promise to protect you and our daughter, but I also promise myself this. I will never again allow Skyline or any system to diminish another human being." Outside, the darkness pressed tighter, but in Noah's eyes, the fire only burned brighter. He knew the next battle would not just be fought in boardrooms or on airwaves. It would be waged in the open, where Skyline's deepest secrets would finally be exposed, and as dawn broke once more, Noah Carter whispered like a vow, "They may try to threaten me with darkness, but I will turn that darkness into light, and when the truth is revealed, none of them will have anywhere left to hide." The next morning, the ground floor of Skyline's Atlanta headquarters was swarming with reporters. Rumors had leaked that Noah Carter would reveal shocking evidence. Cameras, microphones, and spotlights all pointed toward the auditorium where he and his team were preparing to step in. In the backstage room, Priya Patel placed a laptop in front of Noah. On the screen, a string of emails appeared with chilling subject lines. Complaint dismissal. The sender's name, Howard Langston. The content, close the file. No further investigation needed. Do not upset a diamond client. Noah scrolled through each message, his eyes dark but steady. He looked up at Trevor Miles, the man who would testify. "Are you ready?" Trevor nodded firmly. "I've waited my whole life for this." The main hall was packed. In the front row sat Howard Langston and Bradley Whitmore. Howard masked his tension with a forced smile. Bradley leaned back, arrogance in his eyes, certain this was nothing more than political theater. Noah stepped onto the stage. The murmurs died instantly. He opened the laptop and connected it to the giant screen. "Today, we will not speak with words. We will speak with truth." The first email appeared as Noah's voice rang clear. May 12th, an Asian passenger complained about being denied an upgrade despite holding a valid ticket. Howard Langston instructed, "Close the file." The second email. July 27th, a black passenger was pulled from a flight by security without cause. Howard Langston wrote, "A VIP is waiting. Do not complicate this." The room erupted with noise. Camera shutters clicked furiously. Howard jumped up, shouting, "This is stolen internal data. It proves nothing." Noah turned, his gaze like ice. "This information was obtained legally during the Globe Tech transfer, and if you still think it is meaningless..." He pressed a button. A recording played, Howard's own voice. "We need to keep Bradley happy. Clients like him bring in profits. Bury those complaints." The hall exploded. Howard turned pale, stammering. Bradley clenched his jaw, sweat beading on his forehead, despite his strained composure. Trevor Miles rose, his voice booming. "I am a long-time passenger. I have been treated like garbage because of my skin color, and these emails prove it. They knew, but they chose to ignore it. Mr. Carter, I stand with you." One by one, other passengers came forward to tell their stories. A Latina woman, her voice breaking, spoke of being called the maid in business class. An Asian professor described being searched 3 times in a single trip. Each testimony cut deeper into the rotten legacy of Skyline. Finally, Bradley snapped, shouting, "Enough! I fly hundreds of thousands of miles. I paid for that priority. That's how the airline industry works." Noah turned to him, his voice sharp as steel. "Mr. Whitmore, the priority you demanded was not based on money. It was based on privilege you assumed you had. And that privilege has turned Skyline into a tool for arrogance." He paused, scanning the room. "Yesterday, I was forced out of seat 2A. But today, I sit in a bigger seat, the seat that forces Skyline to face the truth." Howard tried to salvage, his voice shaking. "Mr. Carter, this will destroy us. The stock has already lost hundreds of millions." Noah cut him off, his tone unyielding. "No, Howard. The cover-oops destroyed Skyline. Justice is not a cot. It is the only investment that can save this company." Applause broke out from the back rows, at first scattered, then swelling like a wave until it filled the hall. Outside, news exploded across social media. "New CEO exposes systemic discrimination at Skyline." The hashtag Skyline. Truth surged to the top of global trends. Meanwhile, Howard and Bradley fled the hall in chaos, swarmed by reporters, their faces once smug, now etched with the image of downfall. Noah remained on stage, watching as the crowd chanted his name. In the blinding light, he knew this was only the first crest of a tidal wave. The greatest battle was still to come. News of the public hearing spread like wildfire. From New York to Los Angeles, from Atlanta to London, Noah Carter's name appeared on front pages everywhere. The press called him the CEO who unmasked the airline industry. But at the same time, a quiet counterattack began. That evening, when Noah returned to his hotel suite, Priya Patel rushed in, her face pale. The minority faction led by Morrison has filed an emergency petition. They are demanding a no-confidence vote against you tomorrow morning. The air grew heavy. Dylan Brooks placed a tablet on the table. They are backed by Bradley Whitmore. He is spreading rumors that the entire incident on the flight was staged by you to build your image. Noah sat in silence, his fingers interlaced. The room sank into quiet. Then he raised his head, his voice steady. "If they want to test me, I will face them. But this time, I will not just defend myself. I will end their game." The next morning, the board gathered in the glass-walled chamber on the 42nd floor. Morrison sat upright, his arrogant smile as if victory was already his. Bradley, though not a board member, appeared with legs crossed, his gaze dripping with defiance. Noah entered calmly. He did not carry stacks of documents as usual. Only a small USB drive rested in his hand. "Before you vote," he said, his voice echoing, "watch this." The giant screen lit up. It displayed recordings of emails and internal messages provided by Trevor Miles and the group of former managers. In them, Bradley repeatedly demanded that Howard Langston bury complaints, threatening to withdraw contracts if his seating privileges were not secured. The final clip was a leaked video from a bar meeting, Howard's icy voice ringing clear. "I hired people to follow his family. Carter will have to choose, justice or safety." The room exploded. Some board members shot to their feet, eyes wide with shock. Victoria Blackwell gripped her chair, her gaze cold as steel as it swept toward Morrison. Bradley turned pale, leaping up and shouting, "This is fabricated! Cut it off! This isn't legal! Noah looked directly at him, his voice thunderous. Legal or not, the public will decide. You turned Skyline into a haven for greed and privilege. And now the world will see the truth. Victoria stood, her voice firm and resonant. I propose we change the motion. Not a no-confidence vote against Carter, but the removal of those who enabled this rotten culture. The electronic beeps rang one by one. 9 votes in favor, 3 opposed. A decisive majority. Howard Langston was stripped of his position on the spot. Morrison was formally reprimanded. Bradley Whitmore lost all his privileged contracts and now faced potential criminal investigation for interference. In that room, the balance of power had shifted. The man once forced from seat 2A now sat unshaken in the highest seat of authority. That afternoon, Noah stood before the press. Microphones bristled, flashes erupted. He took a deep breath and spoke. Today marks the end of the old Skyline, an airline run by privilege and contempt. And it marks the beginning of a new Skyline, where every passenger, no matter who they are, will be treated with respect. He raised a document high. I hereby announce the Passenger Bill of Rights, effective immediately. Every passenger has the right to fair service. Every complaint will be investigated transparently. No one will ever again be forced from a seat because of their color or their background. The applause thundered like waves. The hashtag #SkylineNewEra erupted globally. That night, in his private office, Noah called his wife on video. Elena's warm smile replaced days of worry. You kept your promise. You protected not only our family, but millions of others. Noah nodded, his eyes glistening. I did not win alone. I won with everyone who was ever dismissed. And from today, they will never have to stay silent again. Elsewhere, Morrison sat in a darkened room, his hands trembling as he turned the latest financial report. Skyline stock had rebounded spectacularly, even surpassing pre-crisis levels. He whispered bitterly, he didn't just win. He turned justice into profit. Victoria Blackwell, quietly observing, smiled. In her eyes for the first time shone a spark of hope. Perhaps at last, a new era has begun. In the world of business, power is often measured in numbers, stock prices, revenue, profit. But the story of Noah Carter reveals a different truth. Real power lies in the ability to force an entire system to change when it is wrong. From a first-class seat taken away, Noah turned humiliation into a catalyst. He did not stop at reclaiming fairness for himself, but used that moment to shine a light across an entire corporation. And so Skyline Airlines transformed from a symbol of privilege into proof that justice is not only about morality, it is also a sustainable business strategy. The lesson here is simple yet profound. Never underestimate a person just because they seem out of place. Because the very one you look down on may be the one holding the future of an entire system. If this story resonates with you, hit like to spread the message. Subscribe so you will not miss the journeys ahead, and leave a comment with just 2 words: real change. Because true change always begins with a single moment of courage to stand up.